Okay, so before I go and rough cut my parts, I just want to sort of lay them out, make sure I allot the right lengths and everything. So let's take a look at our prototype. We liked everything about the prototype except the width. We're expanding the width to 10 inches. Right now it's like 7 5/8. So my height, that was a comfortable height. We're going 11 5/8 to the top. And our length this way on the short angle is 15, which really means it's closer to like 15 and a half when you account for the splay. So I'm just looking to get a rough measurement. So let's see, I have a 41-inch length, so 20 and a half is my center. All right, and we need to get a 15th, we'll say 16. We need to get at least that, so 8 on center, 8 here, 16 there. And that leaves us 13 on that side, 12 on that. All right, so let's give ourselves a little bit of extra. We're going to 11 5/8, so we'll go to 12 and a half. Leave that at 12, leave that. All right, so we got 12 and a half in each rough, and that gives us 16 3/4. So that looks like a good rough length. And we'll do left, center, right. That way, my pieces together, we'll see the grain flow through in sequence. Do the same. I don't want to assume my cherry's the same length. I actually have a little bit extra here. We got 43, so 21 and a half is my center. I need at least 16, and I'd like to get 1 1/2. So this length here, that's a good rough length for me. And we'll do left, center, and then right. Okay, so I have these labeled, so they'll come back together in sequence when the project's done. I'm going to take it over to the sliding compound miter saw and just cut it square. And then after that, I'm going to set my angle of 7 degrees so I can set up for my splay. All right, so let's go make some cuts. So now that I've cut my pieces to a rough length and I've labeled them on the face, whether they're the left, the center, or the right, now I'm going to start cutting my angles that will determine the splay of our kitchen stool. Before I get started, I want to check my sliding compound miter saw for square. I want to make sure that along the full 10-inch length that it is actually 90 degrees. And I'm going to check my square for square too. You can click on the link here to see a video on how to do that. But I want to make sure I'm square this way. That's going to make the stool sit nicely on the ground and not sort of wobble or tweak as someone stands on it. After I've set it for 90 degrees this way, I'm going to get my engineer's protractor and I'm going to set the saw 7 degrees this way, and I want to make sure that it's 7. I found when I was kind of messing around with my prototype that 5 degrees, 4 degrees, it wasn't enough of a splay because it's such a short piece. It didn't really stabilize the piece, which adds function, and it didn't add the beauty of those nice splayed out legs. I found that 7 degrees was enough to add stability and also to make it much more appealing and a nicer design. So I've set it 7 this way, 90 this way. Now I'm ready to start cutting my pieces to length. I'm going to start with my centerpiece. So this is going to be the tread. This is the part we're standing on, okay? I want to make sure that my label, which labels the upright side, my good side, the side that I want to see, I want to make sure that that is facing up, okay? So I'm going to make a cut. And again, I didn't have that much to cut off here. You might have more, but just keep in mind, we want about 15 inches on the face of that. So don't take too much off on the first cut. But I like to make sure that I have wood on both sides of the blade. That ensures minimal deflection. By deflection, I mean sometimes as you're making the cut, the blade kind of angles away and gives you sort of a curved cut. By saddling the blade with wood on both sides, it keeps it straighter through the cut. You get a nice, cleaner cut. So let's make our first cut. And you'll notice as I make this cut, I'm going to make it in small bites. I'm going to slide the saw back a little at a time. That does a couple things. By sliding it back, it's pushing through the grain. The saw isn't pulling the grain up. It's pushing it down as it cuts. I get a cleaner cut. And also by taking smaller bites, I don't overwhelm the blade. I'm not going to get any burn marks. I'm going to get less deflection. It's going to be a good cut. Let's clear our waste out of the way. So I don't need to use a stop for this cut. You can see I got my 7-degree angle. It's nice and clean and 90 this way. This isn't matching up with any other piece, so I'm just going to measure 15 inches on the face. No need to set a stop for this one unless you want your two stools to be, absolutely identical, which I don't think is necessary. All right, so I'm lining up my pencil mark. Okay. Now I made my first cut with my center mark up, my good face up, and on this piece I'm going to keep that good face up on my second cut. It's going to be different when we cut our uprights. So there we have our center tread. You can see that it's angled down on both sides. I'm going to go ahead and cut my cherry piece the same manner, and then I'll show you how we do our uprights. Okay, I have my two center treads cut. Now let's move on to the uprights. So here's one of my cherry uprights. So I have my labeled side. This is the left side. I want my label up on the first cut. What I want to happen is I want that angle to match up, okay? So let's make one cut. And again, I'm leaving enough wood just to saddle the blade on each side. I don't want to take too much off because I was kind of close in my measurement. So let's make one cut. So I have my label up, and I've cut my angle, and you can see when I match that up to my tread that splays my upright out at 7 degrees, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and cut one side, and you notice I'm cutting the side that's closer. So if this is my left piece, this side is closer to the center. When I do my right piece, I'm going to do the side that's closer to the center. I want the top of our upright to have that splay. We're going to oppose the angle on our bottom. So it's important to pay attention. You might want to put a little arrow to indicate center, okay? So let's go ahead. I'm going to cut one on each, and then we'll set a stop and cut things to length. Oh, that's the side for center. And one more. So I've gone through and I've cut my 7-degree angle on the inner side of my upright. Now I need to have my 7 degrees going this way. And the way I'm going to do that is just take it, instead of having it label side up this time, I'm going to have it label side down. I'll measure my final length, which if I recall was 11 5/8, and I'll set a stop. So all of these are the exact same length. By making sure that I use a stop and they're the same length, it'll keep the stool from being wobbly. It'll keep it nice and straight and true. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to measure my 11 5/8. Give myself a good line, and I'll need to set myself a stop. I'm going to go over and get a clamp for a second so I can set a stop. All right, so I got a stop block and some clamps so I can set up a stop. Went through and I measured the 11 5/8 inches from the end there. I'm going to set the blade. I should have my safety glasses on. And that looks like about right. It doesn't have to be dead on the measurement, but they all need to be the same, and that's why we're using the stop block. So I'll just set that there. It's a little short, I'll move it over. Sometimes, as you're tensioning your clamp, sometimes it kind of moves your stop. So I like to, before I put that last bit of tension on, I like to check it. Seems pretty good, I'll check it. Still on my line. Now if I just put one clamp on, as I load the pieces on and off and it taps against the stop, it could slowly back off and change my position. So I always use 2 clamps when I'm using a stop block. So I'll put a second clamp on, and this should keep it from moving on me. This will give me good consistent results. All right, with both clamps tight, I'll go one more time, check. Okay, I've got my right on my pencil line. So now I'm going to take each one of my uprights. I've already cut my 7-degree angle on one side. I did that on the side closer to the center of our glue up. At the bottom now, I did my first cut with my label up. Now I'm going to put my label down. And I'm going to take that 7-degree angle that I cut earlier, and I'm going to rest it gently against the stop. And I've got 2 clamps on there to keep my stop in a consistent spot. So you can see by putting it face down this time, my angle is going the opposite way so that it'll sit at that nice 7-degree splay and meet up with our tread perfectly. I'm going to go ahead and cut the rest of the pieces. So now I have my treads cut and my uprights cut. I'm ready to start laying out my dovetails and getting ready to do the dovetails on our dovetail kitchen stool.